Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the B Channel podcast, where my objective is to bless, edify, and encourage others to live their best lives. Today, I have a special guest with me, and our topic for today is the buried blessings of bipolar disorder, featuring Sarah I. Fox. And introduce yourself to the good people.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for inviting me today. I am so honored to be on this podcast. And my name is Sarah. I am the host of a faith and mental health podcast called Rough Edges Podcast. And on there, I talk about my journey with bipolar disorder and also learning how to navigate my faith through doing mental health treatment. And so I am also a recent graduate of Liberty University with a master's in forensic psychology. And I am currently a case manager for supervised release in Brooklyn, New York.
Wow, that is quite the resume, sis. Congrats on that achievement of graduating.
Thank you.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about your journey with bipolar.
Yes. So my journey with bipolar disorder started when I experienced a manic episode in 2020. So it was in December. And then I got hospitalized in January of 2021. So, for those of you who don't know what a manic episode consists of, it was me speaking very fast to the point where I was very incoherent. I also had an elevated sense of self, like I felt like I was on cloud nine. I felt untouchable, invincible. And I also felt like I was a genius because I was mapping out my life 10 years into the future, like to every detail. And my family noticed that I was being incoherent. And the flip side of mania is that you could get aggressive if it's not treated. So I was aggressive. I was saying a lot of vulgar things to my family. And I was also experiencing psychosis, which was moments where I was seeing things and hearing things that other people couldn't see or hear. And because I had those like hallucinations, I was also paranoid a lot of the times. So my family, who was trying to help me out and to get me the care that I needed at the time, I saw them as the enemy and I thought they were out to get me. So there was a lot of things going on to the point where I had to be hospitalized. And so following my hospitalization, I got diagnosed with bipolar type 1. And so with that, it's more of like severe mania that accompanies that bipolar type. And when I received the diagnosis, I was very devastated because I didn't understand how I could have this disorder. And I remember it clear as day. Like I was in the hospital and one of the nurses came to me and she gave me a packet and she was like, if you have any questions, like just let us know and read this over and we'll talk about it. And I read the packet, and the first thing at the top was bipolar disorder. And I'm like, what is this? I don't know what this is. Like, because before that, I wasn't privy to mental health conditions. Like, I wasn't knowledgeable about bipolar disorder. And the only thing I knew about it was that people would describe the weather as being bipolar or people being bipolar if they have like mood swings and everything else. So I already had a negative connotation. And that diagnosis really just like rocked my world in terms of my faith and especially like how I viewed God in the midst of dealing with this diagnosis. And a couple of months later, I decided to start the Rough Edges podcast because I didn't want people to feel alone in their journeys. And I also, especially for Christians, I didn't want them to continue to be confused as to how faith can inform mental health treatment.
That was so great, sis. You just answered all of my questions. And thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable because I was like, how does she feel? And you told us you felt devastating. I know that must have made you feel lost and then just like disoriented about how you're going to move forward from that place and what does this all mean for the future. So I know that must have been tough. And that was really commendable for you to have the wherewithal in the midst of that moment to say, you know what, let me start something. Let me encourage, let me advocate for other people with this platform.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's amazing. So when did you come to the place where you saw it as a blessing having bipolar?
Ooh, man, how much time do we have? Because
All the time you need.
but bipolar disorder, it took a while for me to actually see it as a blessing. Because initially I thought it was a curse. I thought it was a punishment. I thought I wasn't doing all that I could do to maintain my relationship with God. And so there was a lot of disappointment, devastation that was associated with bipolar disorder. And it wasn't until I started the podcast that I actually realized that this could be a blessing. Maybe not to me initially, but it could be a blessing to other people because I am using this experience. And that also took a lot of inner work myself because I didn't initially want to start a podcast. Like, I wanted to play it safe and start like a blog and just write some things and have people read it. But my friends, they really encouraged me to get into podcasting because they were like, you need to share this story. Like, it can't be an article that people are just going to
Right.
read and click off
Yeah,
of.
because it's different when you read something, you don't necessarily hear the emotion behind it unless they have those voiceovers. You don't hear the emotion behind what's going on.
Right.
It is so much that's encompassed with that one diagnosis and, just with bipolar, let alone all the other mental health issues that could come up in life. Like, it's not enough to do the blog and the article. It doesn't do it justice. So that's amazing that you chose to use your voice and not let it silence you.
Yeah, like and actually, now that I think about it, I wanted to go the safe route because I didn't know how people would react. And that was like one of the biggest things in the back of my mind. I'm like, how are people going to take this? Because I didn't really tell like my church community initially. I didn't tell like people at work. Like, I wasn't really like out there broadcasting the fact that I have bipolar disorder. And so in doing the podcast, I realized this might hit some people that I didn't initially want to tell. And so it was through a lot of prayer, a lot of encouragement from my support system, and just really understanding that your story can impact somebody's life for the good. And your testimony could change the life of somebody else. And with that in mind, I knew that my desire to help others was greater than my fear of what other people would think of me.
Ooh, that's good because at the end of the day, it's like you have to choose your testimony and know that that's more important than holding back because what you say could set somebody free.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did God show up for you during this journey?
He showed up in ways that I didn't even know he could. And it all started when I was in the hospital. Like, I was angry at God for one, because I was like, God, what is going on? I'm confused. But even though I was angry, I still said, God, don't leave me. Don't leave me here. I'm confused. I'm hurt, but I'm also a little scared. So please stay with me. And when I tell you that I felt the presence of God within me, through the Holy Spirit. And it makes me emotional just even thinking about it. But He gave me the peace that I needed to be able to not only endure the hospital, but also to really carry that diagnosis and learn how to get treatment. Because I often say on the podcast that faith and psychology can intersect for mental wellness. And it's not just enough to just pray and just, yeah, those things are effective, but when you're dealing with a mental health condition, you have to treat it as if it's a physical condition as well. Like, if you broke your leg, you wouldn't just not want to wear a cast and just pray through it and think it's going to be okay. You would want to get that treatment so that your leg could heal. Well, the same thing with your brain. It's like having a mental health condition is like a chemical imbalance in the brain. And a brain is a part of your body. And so you need to be able to take care of your brain while you're trying to work through how you're going to live the rest of your life with this condition. And so God showed up for me through community as well, because let me tell you, my friends, my family, my mother, my sister, like mentors, they all rallied around me, and they just helped me to not only take my treatment seriously, because there were times where I was like, could we just stop this medication? Like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. But my mom and sister, they would encourage me to, like, hey, it's tough, but we got you. We're here for you, and we love you. And so God showed up through them, and he also showed up through like the professional mental health team, the therapist that I have now, the psychiatrist that I have now. They have been pouring into me in terms of like me being effective with the treatment and making sure that I was like staying on top of my meds and, like, doing the emotional work behind it. So God showed up through various forms, and those are just some of the ways.
No, that was truly beautiful, because I love what you said about the fact that you were angry, but you still took that to God. You still chose to cling to God in the midst of all of that uncertainty. And because a lot of people was like, you know what, I don't know what this is. And the last thing that people want to do when they're feeling confused and lost is usually run towards God. But you ran toward God and you stayed with him and you trusted him in that, and that was just so beautiful. And I love the fact that people rallied around you, and that's half the battle, having that support system, having that community, the right community,
Hmm.
heavy on the right community.
Yes.
And I also want to ask you, so I heard you say psychiatrist and therapist, so does that mean you had to see two different kinds of counselors? Can you
Yes.
differentiate that for us?
Yes, of course. So, I had to see a psychiatrist because I needed the medication. So, a
Mhm,
psychiatrist really specializes in not only diagnosing you with the
mhm,
mental health condition, but they
mhm,
also are able to prescribe medicine. So, I
mhm,
had to see a psychiatrist for my medication, and
mhm.
a therapist is more for helping you talk through and walk through the emotional parts, the trauma, and anything that you really need to process, like on a emotional level and also a cognitive level. So a therapist is really like a very specialized friend, if you will. Like, they would talk you like off the ledge, talk you through things, but they would do it from a psychological background and help you walk through those things. So I wanted to do the psychiatrist and the therapist because it really infused both of those practices. So I got my medication to help with the chemical imbalance, and I also got the therapist to help through like the mood swings, getting to know my triggers, and really like understanding what bipolar disorder is all about.
Right. That's so important, because, there are a lot of times where we hear people say psychiatrists and therapists, and we think that that's interchangeable. So I'm so glad that you helped us with that distinction. And that's really important to know, that you need both people on the team. Like, one
Mhm.
without the other is not going to help, because one person, like you said, is focused more so on the chemical imbalance and helping to titrate those medicines and make sure they're at the right levels. And the other person is more like talk therapy to really just reframe things on a more ongoing basis, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So that's so good, because we need to know that, and especially in the Black community, we really need to
Mm.
know that it's crucial. And that leads me to my next question. In your opinion, how can the faith community, the Black community, and the global community eliminate the stigma around bipolar?
That is a great question. So, for one, I would say I'll start with the faith community. So, I would say that the faith community could start by learning more about mental health conditions and what triggers may be. Because a lot of the times in the faith community, we try to attribute it to demonic possession and saying, oh, maybe you didn't have enough faith. That's why you're depressed, or, those types of things that we say in the faith community sometimes. And I think by learning more about what triggers can happen when someone is dealing with a mental health condition and really trying to understand the balance as to what may be a spiritual issue versus a psychological issue, then that would be a good place to start. As far as the Black community, we need to get comfortable with seeking help. Because a lot of the times in the Black community, we think that we're strong and we could take on everything, take on the world, and that we don't have to rely on anybody else. And while, yes, it is good to be strong and it's good to weather the storm and get through it, we also need to realize that we do need help. And especially in light of like racism and systemic barriers that we have to deal with, it's often hard for us to say and admit that we do need help in our circumstances. And so I would say to start off, really learn more about what a therapist is, like we just discussed, and really understand like what therapy can do for you. Because a lot of the times people think you go to therapy just because you're crazy or you're dealing with excessive trauma, but that's not necessarily true. Like you got a therapist to help you walk through what your goals are in life or where you see yourself in the next 5 years, or really trying to talk you through like how you navigate conflict in relationships. Like there are just so many ways that therapy could be used. And I think people are hesitant because there's a stigma attached to that. So just really starting to know like, hey, it's okay to admit that you need help and where you can go about seeking that help. And the global world, that's a huge one. But I think it just starts with acknowledging that we are all humans who are trying to navigate life, and that if you stereotype or stigmatize somebody, it's going to keep them in that box and it's going to make them put their walls up, and we're not going to be vulnerable with each other. And I think vulnerability is the first step to really acknowledging where someone is and the help that they can receive. So on a global scale, we need to recognize that we are human beings and we need each other and we need to be kind to one another.
That is so good. Like I love what you said as far as the faith community, because that's something that people are quick to jump to that conclusion. Oh, it must have been something that you have going on, and you're not praying enough. You don't have enough faith, and we need to put some blessed oil and pray
Yeah.
harder. And it's like, no, there's something going on, and I need to really address that. Like you said, see the whole body as your temple, include the brain in that
Yep.
package. And I love what you say, about the Black community, because we're like, oh no, I really liken life in certain circumstances. First, especially being a Black woman, it feels like you're going to die exhausted, like that book says, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we have to stop like going until like stop going, and we're just letting ourselves run on fumes. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, stop. You need help. It's okay. Like you
Right.
said, we're human, and that's so good, because that's like the main thing. Like you said, the kindness, being kind to people. You don't know what people are going through, and the fact, the vulnerability being our superpower. It really is. If we would just harness it, so many things could really change for the better in terms of our
Mm-hmm.
mental health journeys.
Yep.
Yeah, so we just have to really work on that, like as a whole community,
Mm-hmm.
in totality.
Yeah.
And yeah, so if you could plant one seed for the listeners as far as this conversation is concerned, what would you want them to take away about bipolar disorder?
I love that. Plant a seed. Um, I would say that our diagnosis is not indicative of who we are as people. It is just information about what's going on in our bodies. And that for me, it took me a while to realize that because I often attributed bipolar disorder to meaning like I had a defect in myself. And that's not true because when you get a cold, like, do you say, oh, this cold is indicative of my character? Like, I must be a
Right.
bad person? No, you don't say that at all. You say, like, oh, I have a cold. I'm going to treat it and, it's going to go away. Great. Same thing with bipolar disorder. Yeah, it may not go away, but you could treat it. You can like have like different things to be able to manage your triggers and learn where they're coming from. So a diagnosis is just information about what's going on in your brain, what's going on, why you had that manic episode, why you had that reaction. So if you have a bipolar diagnosis, don't let that be something that will hinder you in seeking treatment or seeking the healing that you are meant to have, because you are worth the healing. You are worth the time that it takes. And you shouldn't beat yourself up for having a diagnosis because it's just information.
Ooh, that's so good. You are worth the healing. You are worth the time that it takes. Let that marinate in your soul, people. Let that marinate in your soul. Like, we deserve to be in a good place mentally. And, you do have to fight for it sometimes. You have to wrestle. You have to be
Mhm.
your own best advocate. So it's so essential. And I'm glad that you're being like that trailblazer, you're being that pioneer, you are, just doing big things and letting people know about what it's like to be Black, to be a Christian, and be a woman with bipolar, and just letting us know that life goes on. So,
Yes.
yeah, that's so crucial. Do you have any projects that you are currently working on?
In terms of projects, I would say that I'm trying to really hone in on the shop that I have that's like attached to the podcast. I'm saying I'm trying to hone in on it because I haven't really been working that hard on it, but I do have a shop, and it's a faith based woman of color owned shop. I own it with my friend Marilette, and she's also a woman of color. And 20% of the proceeds of what we make from the shop go to a mental health organization. And right now we're partnering with the Christian Mental Health Initiative. So that is another like faith-based mental health organization that goes out to different churches and gives information about mental health and how faith could help that. So yeah.
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful that you're giving back. Like, not only are you providing the merch, but you're giving back to a worthy cause. And so how can the people connect with you?
Yeah, so you can connect with me. I'm mostly on Instagram at rough.edges.podcast. And I'm also on TikTok at rough edges with Sarah. And that's also the handle for YouTube and Facebook. And you can also visit my website. It's roughedgespodcast.com.
Okay. And for those of you who are watching, this information is currently on the screen. If you are listening, don't worry, all the tea will be in the description box below. And I thank everybody so much for watching and tuning in today. Thank you, Sarah, for taking the time to join me. I really appreciate that. And um, peace and blessings, everybody.